for offering to be our guest speaker today. Is we're pretty good at like putting together information, but it's just not the same as having the experts in the area. You know what I mean?
No, honestly, it's a pleasure. I mean, on behalf of myself and Craig, we're honoured to help out DigiByte be involved. I mean, DigiByte's one of the first coins that we ever added to our pool when we launched back in 2017. So
Oh
yeah, it's really nice
wow!
to be here today.
Yeah, I have like a million questions for you.
Well, far away. I can answer as many as you like today.
Well, let's start, Patrick. Why don't we go ahead and we've got about 10 slides and it's kind of information heavy, but I don't want to spend a ton of time on it because I really want to make sure we have plenty of time for Q&A with James and Craig if you want to join the stage at that point. But if we look at our learning objectives for today, you can read them. You know, I know most people here know what mining is. We're not going to go into exhaustive detail on that. What mining pools are, you know, and what we learned in our process of getting 8.2 tested is, you know, why are mining pools so important? We're really diving into that a little bit more today. How you can participate in a mining pool, and what does how does a mining pool compare to a solo miner? And that was, you know, like I said, over the last couple months, we've done a lot of kind of learning ourselves, which helped us kind of create this this outline. And again, I know most people, there's not a ton of people in here today, so we're not going to bore you to death with all the details, but we want to get, you know, get this in a format where people can share it. So all the notes that we're going to regard to, they're all in the PowerPoint. If you download it yourself, you can see it in the notes section that goes beyond just our slides. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into it. Want to go to the next slide, Patrick? What is mining? Got it. Okay. Yep, I see it. So most of us know, you know, what mining is. But just a high level, it's that process of validating the new blocks, and this is for proof of work. We're talking specifically for proof of work blockchain. You know, why is that so important? It's that mechanism for maintaining the integrity and security of the blockchain, and there, you know, there's a competitive nature to that. So, you know, it's not easy. It's not like the easiest thing to mine a block. So you've got to put in that work so it can't be easily compromised. And one thing I want to make sure, and I'd ask for some feedback on this, when it comes to mining proof of work, you're going to need some specialized hardware, either an ASIC, and we covered that when ASICs and GPU mining, when we were talking about nodes. If you want to refer back to that PowerPoint and resources, but you're going to need some sort of specialized hardware for that. And basically, the first miner that solves the puzzle, you know, gets the right to add a new block to the blockchain. It ensures that our transactions are confirmed and recorded in that sequential, tamper-resistant manner. Really, I've been to do a side, a lot of the things that are going on in the news right now with whistleblowers and that sort of thing. I just had a thought today. I was like, wow, if we put that data on some blockchains, that would be tamper resistant and, you know, mutable. Might be an interesting use case. And miners are rewarded by that minted cryptocurrency, depending on what it is you're mining, whether it's DigiByte or Litecoin or Bitcoin or whatever. And I think that's another aspect that's really interesting about mining is a lot of people say, well, you know, can you have a blockchain without a cryptocurrency? And, you know, for DigiByte, it's the cryptocurrency, the coin itself, that's that miner reward that allows that to function. That's the incentivization for something to get mined. So the coin is very important to the process for sure. And, you know, the difficulty of changing of solving those puzzles of getting that block, it can adjust over time. And we actually have a protocol in DigiByte that adjusts that difficulty called DigiShield, which others have employed as well. So yeah, just the proof of work mining, and this is again specific to proof of work. It provides that security against fraudulent transactions and double spending on the blockchain. And we've seen that problem with other chains, and knock on wood, we haven't had that issue with DigiByte yet. Does anybody want to add some context to that slide before we move on to the next? All right.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, you summed that up really well, Laura. I mean, obviously, mining is really important for securing the chain, but obviously, like you said, how blocks are generated in the first place. And like you mentioned, there's a lot of competition. Um, Decentralization is really important as well when it comes to mining. So, despite being a mining pool operator, what makes me happy is when we see miners collaboratively spreading out as best as they can to decentralize on each of those algorithms that you have on offer with DigiByte. Um, so it's really, really important. And again, it's highly competitive. As you said, the first person to actually get the right block hash to unlock the block to get the coins. So it all comes down to the infrastructure as well. So say, for example, there could be like two separate people in the world that actually get that block hash, and it comes down to like latency to the pool. Um, how fast is the infrastructure that the DigiByte wallet or core daemon is running on? To who gets that first? And obviously having the checks in place to make sure that using the distributed ledger system that we use in DigiByte and the majority of cryptocurrency coins is there for the public to see. So yeah, again, decentralization is very important to mining. It's really important that people spread out. And it's important for the security of DigiByte overall, for everybody, whether it's the miner, whether it's the developers, whether it's a mining pool, because we're all in it together in this game to make sure that we secure the chain and that we've got longevity and hopefully leading on towards adoption from other platforms or systems that we could set up on top of it.
That's a really good point too about the decentralization aspect of it and the transparency aspect of it. Being able to kind of see what's being mined and where and that sort of thing, who has the hash rate, and it's competitive. We Like you said, it's competitive in its nature, but we want to work together because everybody actually succeeds. It's not like a zero-sum game. Ultimately, the stronger the chain is, the stronger everybody is who's trying to participate with it. So that's a good point to add as well. Anybody else before we move on to the next slide? Okay, I think we're ready for the next one, Patrick. Yeah. So what's a mining pool? Um, just doing some basic research, but really it kind of goes back to what James was just referencing. It's a collaboration. It's a collaborative group of miners that come together, and they're sharing that computational power to increase that chance of successfully mining a cryptocurrency. Um, and if you can combine that power, you're going to distribute the rewards, and you can do that more consistently than if you were a solo miner. We do have solo miners in the community too, and it's not to say those aren't good and powerful, and we celebrate with them every time they get a block and they put it on Twitter. But it's that not everybody has a ton of infrastructure, so being able to participate in a pool is just another option for people. Um, I think what other notes that we have? Yeah, so that proportional or pay per share reward system is really key to being part of a pool, and it's it also comes down to, your pool operators that manage that infrastructure and, monitor that and distribute the rewards is, it's kind of the overseer of the whole pool. You don't have to take that individual responsibility anymore. Um, and we'll go in a little bit later about kind of how to join a pool and what to think about in that. But I'll give that over to James, who I'm sure can do much deeper dive and what a mining pool is and anything I've left out.
Sure. So yeah, you're completely right, Laura. I mean, obviously, when cryptocurrencies first came out, everyone was mining them with their CPUs using a basic computer. Then moved towards GPUs, FPGAs, and then what we have today, ASICs, so application-specific integrated circuits. So devices that are made specifically for hashing one kind of algorithm. So with DigiByte, you've obviously got 5 algorithms. You've got Odo, Skyne, Script, SHA-256, and Qubit. So, for example, SHA-256, obviously being the popular algorithm, the one that Bitcoin uses, um, that's the device that we use. And quite right, at the beginning, again, it was a lot easier when there was less network hash power, the difficulty was lower for anybody to snag a block. And pools came about when obviously hash rate increased, difficulty increased. You had a lot of miners that, as you quite rightly said, didn't have the infrastructure, they didn't have the hash power. So by working together as a mining community, again, splitting out to different pools increases the chances of all the pools, all the miners getting involved in this process, being rewarded fairly, and to stop centralization. Because again, we know if we allow too much power to be centralized on one pool, or if a solo miner is mining with like high hash power, like over 51% versus the rest of the network, they can have an advantage. There's theoretically the ability to prioritize certain transactions as opposed to using the standard mempool technique of what's weighted the highest, like which of these transactions shall I push through as a mining pool to get the best reward. um, so it's really, really important, again, that things are split out. And again, it's just an evolution. So as the hash powers increase, so is difficulty. And if a lot of people solo mined, the rewards would be sometimes very few and far in between. People that had more network hash power more likely to hit the blocks. But again, the bonus of DigiByte with your 5 algorithms is the way that, like with DigiShield and other advances that have been made, allows all those algorithms to almost be mined equally, regardless of, say, if SHA-256 has got 5 or 10 petashes of power, and say Script is only working at a few gigahashes. It's a very clever way of balancing and making sure that, say, the SHA-256 algorithm isn't taken advantage of, and people mining, say, other algorithms aren't left behind. So yeah, I mean, again, integrity, security is really important. Proof of work is core at the bottom of all of this. And again, a mining pool gives miners an easier experience. So they don't have to set up a wallet. They don't have to worry about security concerns via, RPC ports being open. It gives them a nice interface where they get all their stats, so they can track things. So again, working together in the community using mining pools alongside solar miners that have large facilities just helps keep everything balanced and things flowing.
I like the word balanced. I think that's a good way. Yeah, it's gonna it does take a lot of balance, and I hadn't really thought about it that way, but you're right. Um, does anybody else have anything they want to add to that? Yeah, I have to say this last couple months has been a real learning experience. I've always thought of mining pools as something that's kind of mystical out there, and the more that we sort of connecting with the operators, I mean, it's just the whole thing has been really fascinating to learn. Um, so why don't we go on to the next one, Patrick? Yeah, why are mining pools so important? And I think we pretty much hit on that just in the discussion. You know, inclusive participation, like you said, if you're just a single person, a solo miner, just have a little bit of equipment, you get to participate in the network by participating with a pool, um, getting your rewards through that way. Network security, back to really what you were saying before, we we want to keep that balance, that this distributed mining operations in a balanced way, so the network stays more secure and there's no dominance. And you also hit on this too, James. Learning and networking, and that to me, I will say, in our process of working through this, Y Kegel and Jose, we've definitely learned a lot, and we've done a lot of networking with the pools, and we realize that is something we really, as a community, can expand on, because it was a big gaping hole in our understanding, I think, of how important that aspect of it was. So again, things like today, doing more of these types of interactions, and just learning more and getting more connected with the pools is important. And then that accessibility kind of goes in line with being inclusive, making it accessible to anybody to participate, and they don't have to have huge infrastructure costs or responsibilities behind it. So that one's kind of really a wrap up to our last one. But were you going to say something, James?
Yeah, I was just going to kick in. I mean, as much as mining is also like very essential to the process and securing the chain, what you just touched on there with nodes and wallets, daemons running, that's also very important. So we were talking about moving things forward and security, and every now and again, as we're doing at the moment, we're trying to upgrade DigiByte with our RC2 version 8.22. And we're trying to work on improvements like wallet loading time, on hash verification, things that will optimize the wallet to make it easier for people to download, for it to sync up. But again, this is how the whole system works. It runs off nodes. We need nodes because they're essentially a full piece of the blockchain. This is how any cryptocurrency works, via peer-to-peer. So block is found, it does a broadcast out to all the wallets that it's connected to, or daemons, and then it does the same. The process keeps repeating. So maintaining stability of the chain is very important through usage of nodes. Now, when I say that, it's not just about running the DigiByte software, it's about also making that decision on whether you're supporting the change. So when we roll out our new version of DigiByte to the public, what we're hoping is that everybody else is going to upgrade. So it's important that pool operators upgrade. It's important that exchange operators upgrade. Anybody that's using a core wallet upgrades, because it's important we're all on the same version, using the same consensus and the same code. When you start having a differential in node versions and they've got quite big changes, you can notice forks in the network. You have disagreement. So again, what you just said, Laura, about connecting with people in the community, whether it's large scale solar miners or pool operators, is the right way to go. I mean, this industry is very competitive. It's certainly being shrunk to a degree just by all the competition, and sadly through a lot of the scams and other things that we've all seen and put up with since crypto's kicked off. But it's just as important as the proof of work mining process to make sure that there are distributed ledgers around the world running 24/7, that make sure all the mining work is protected, and that people get a cut. And to move on from the nodes as well, we've touched on reward mechanisms. So there are loads of them about. There, as you rightly mentioned, pay per share. So this is where the mining operators are actually fueling the wallets and the payments, even if blocks aren't found, to be able to pay miners. So it's like an incentive. As we know, like power costs have increased dramatically, and it's shut down a lot of operations. And that's of a concern to us, because obviously we need that power, and we need a lot of it, and decentralized, to make sure that no one person has an unfair advantage with mining blocks. And again, so we have that transactional security through verification, having that power on all those algorithms. So pools that offer PPS help kind of get around the issue of breaking even. It keeps people interested in mining on the network, and continue to get their block rewards. Other pools do like proportional payments. So when a block is found, you get paid based on how many shares you put forward. And then there are other mechanisms to try and keep people from pool hopping, like payment per last known share or payment per last known time. At the end of the day, it all comes down to what you have as a miner. Where do you fit into the whole situation? And how can you gain the advantage? So at the moment, I mean, cryptocurrency is primarily, like all the prices and everything that we see, is primarily determined at the moment by the proof of work cycle until we move on towards utilization aspects of DigiByte. And this is a problem not just DigiByte has, a lot of coins have right now. Obviously, we've got some coins that are already coming to the end of life where their total supply is being mined. And I'm very interested to see what's going to be happening at this point. So I can see prices potentially dipping on a lot of coins that don't have utilization cases, because the people that are stimulating the market and using the exchanges aren't always investors, but they'll be miners. And these miners, as I said, based on power prices recently, are doing things on a day rate. They're saying, well, if I mine today and flip on my machines, will I break even? Can I cover my power costs? Some of us are more fortunate and are able to keep on mining, through the dips and, cover our power costs without exchanging crypto. We've got lots of different people in this space. So you've got like long-term holders. And I talked about investors as well. Not to say they're not out there, they are. I mean, we've got like some big whales that, moving DigiByte around, people that have been holding for a long time. I think that speaks volumes in terms of the belief in DigiByte. And again, you guys are like one of the first coins that came out from Bitcoin, and Jared like having close interaction, with the development process. And as you mentioned, DigiShield, again, it's been utilized by other projects to their advantage, something free of charge, which they've managed to get from DigiByte due to the open source nature of everything that we do in the crypto community. So, and I've just expanded a little bit beyond what we were just talking about.
No, that was good.
But it's a fascinating area. There's just so much more to cryptocurrency, and I really want to see DigiByte succeed. So yeah, I'll hand back over to you, Laura.
No, I think that no, I'm glad that you added that, and really during the Q&A, definitely I think you touched on an interesting point, is like what happens when everything gets mined, and because that's not happening until 2035 with DigiByte, we've got this advantage in some ways to see what's happening with others and how that is manifesting. So that's actually a point I hadn't thought about, but had a little tunnel vision.
I was going to say, to touch on that, I mean, obviously you're quite right. I mean, the total supply, we're not foreseeing that happen until 2035 with DigiByte. But just to go into it technically briefly, and obviously I'm happy to expand on this in Q&As later on. But what happens when all the blocks are actually mined? Everyone thinks, right, no more rewards to be gained. That's wrong. There still are, but they get cut down. So at the moment, when a miner mines a block, they get the whole DigiByte, and they also get something called the transaction fees, which are on top. So those transaction fees come from when, say, for example, I want to send some DigiByte to you, Laura, I have to pay a network fee or transaction charge to send that. So what happens is when a block is found, these transactions live inside the memory pool. The ones that are most heavily weighted, ones more likely to get accepted into the chain until the next block is found, and then those transactions try to be pushed into there. So let's say, for example, we're in 2035, the last block has just been mined. Miners are thinking, what happens next? This is what happens. So every time someone sends transactions, they still go into the memory pool. when people are mining on a mining pool, the block reward disappears completely, and what people have instead is just the transaction fee that's associated with that block for all the transactions that get accepted into the chain. So what you'll notice is a dramatic decrease in the rewards that you get from mining DigiByte at that point. But then you need to look into it in terms of scarcity. When there's nothing left to be mined, scarcity of supply, that can sometimes increase the price. But again, it comes back to what I just said about utilization. So again, proof of work is the thing that's undermining a lot of cryptocurrencies right now. That's what's stimulating the market. But what's really important for DigiByte and a lot of other coins is that utility. We have to think about how we can get either DigiByte used as a currency directly, or how, as you mentioned earlier, Laura, you were saying, well, with whistleblowers, I think this is your example. You were saying, well, maybe we could, solidify that data on chain, and this is kind of what we see happening with asset-based systems. And so, it's certainly possible that we could begin like inputting other information. It's just a matter of development and changing some code. So yeah, there's an awful lot to it, but it's not the end of the road. But again, the value of DigiByte or any other coin past the point of expiry of proof of work when that system ends. And just to say, the block reward disappears, still get transaction rewards, but proof of work is still important. You still need miners to essentially push those transactions through. If all the miners switch off, what happens is everything goes into this memory pool, it just keeps building and building and building, and then no transactions get committed. So what you could say is, at the moment, whilst proof of work is still active, like on a large scale for the advantage of the block rewards, is that when the block reward completely expires, you could argue that this is actually good for DigiByte in a way, because you can use a lot less power to still secure and maintain the network. And you could potentially just use Raspberry Pis. You could say, well, it's too expensive to run ASICs now. The block reward, the rewards that you get from mining are a lot less. So it means there's less of an impact on the environment. We talked about power costs being the main determining factor on whether people switch on their ASICs or their FPGAs. So it's really important, again, to think about the future, not just to think about a cryptocurrency, but also to think about how we can get DigiByte utilized, whether it's by merchants, whether it's by on-chain storage, or integration with other cryptocurrency projects. But again, sorry, I've digressed over what I'm supposed to be talking about, but
No,
it's just a really interesting subject.
no, that was good, and I think that's a good point, and definitely one that the community is as a whole working on, and like you said, that ultimately it's the utilization. When somebody ever asks, what do you think of this project? What do you think of that project? And I always ask, what's the use case? If their use case is, well, the price is going to go up, that's not a use case. So it really does come down to, what's the actual use case? That's really all that matters. And, having a secure network to be able to execute. But that's good. That's good. Does anybody else want to add onto that before we to the next slide? Okay, I think we're ready, Patrick. So if you want to participate, with a mining pool, basic steps of, first you got to choose your pool. And in just choosing your pool, there's, it's kind of, if you give a mouse a cookie kind of situation, just choosing a pool is going to have a bunch of, different metrics or different variables that work for you. And just some of them, and I believe James has touched on this as well, but what's the reputation and trustworthiness of those pools? And that's, as we found in doing our research, that's not always a very easy metric to measure. And maybe that's something, James, you can help us with as far as how to go about that. I mean, you've got your own pool, but I mean, things like this, like showing up on camera and helping doing a presentation for a community. all of those to me are values of trustworthiness and reputation. Um, what size pool are you looking for? Looking for pool size and hash rate. Because a larger pool, it might have more consistent payouts, because it's got a higher combined hash rate. But, the smaller pools, um, you might have provide more individual rewards, so something to think about. Payment methods, we were like you were saying, there's different ways to pay. So whether it's pay per share, pay per last node, whatever that risk tolerance is for you. And also fees. There's it doesn't seem to be a huge variation in fees from pools to pools, but those fees can change depending on the pool and then what it is that you want to mine. Um, so look here, we're hoping everybody wants to mine DigiByte, but that's something to keep in mind. And then how often are you going to get paid out, and the interface and features. Those are all just for step one. You're going to have to go through all of those. But once you found that, it should be pretty straightforward to set up an account and get your hardware working with a mining pool. I'm sure you've got a ton to add to that, James. So I'm going to let you go for it.
Oh, I have. Right, I'll jump right in. So yeah, I mean, Laura, you've done a good job there covering like some of the main things that a miner will check. So again, going back to the beginning of like mining pools, when they were first set up, they were set up by people that obviously had really good coding experience. They understood crypto. They could work through like the C++ code, and they could set up a platform ready to take advantage of people that wanted to come on board that couldn't find blocks by themselves. So, I mean, pool fees are really important. At the end of the day, I mean, if you're comparing different pools, you can see pools offering like mining with no charge, and then you can see pools operating up to 2 to 5%. Now, again, it comes down to sometimes the payment system that's being used, because these pool operators, like I said, are sometimes funding like the payments when blocks aren't being found to keep the miners, which is a great incentive. But again, it comes down to reputation. And as things have progressed, and due to the open source nature, which is one of the best things about crypto communities, it's also meant that people are more easily able to start their own pools. Now, there's good and bad things to this. Number one, it gives miners more choice, so it's a great thing. But then, what is the technical skill level of the people running these pools? What is their reputation? What is their trust level? And this isn't to discredit like any pools out there. I'm always grateful for any new pools that I come and see on board, for anybody that shows a willingness to learn and like help the crypto community in general. But again, as we've seen with scams, we see people setting up pools that sometimes don't have the technical knowledge. They hit walls, they hit problems. Miners don't get paid. Websites get switched off. And again, this is a problem for everybody, because it creates a distrust, and it takes mining power away from the DigiByte network. It takes, that kind of involvement away. So again, when you're choosing a mining pool, if there are miners out there that are interested, again, compare all these different things. Check at the pool fees, see how they conduct themselves, like the pool operators or the moderators that you have. Are they genuinely helpful? If you have a problem, are they polite? I think most people, when you've got a problem or you're mining with a particular pool, you want to make sure that you're getting your payments on time. Are they going out on time? Are there discrepancies? I'd like to say, in my experience, the majority of the pools that I've used before I started mining pool, even pools that I use now to mine for coins that we don't host on coin miners, are quite good, and people help each other out. You do see more pool operators collaborating with one another, helping get past problems, which mitigates risks for miners, like with payment problems or, with blocks being found that, aren't paid out properly. So, yeah, it's really important to choose a good mining pool, but equally, like I keep on hammering on about decentralization. Look at where the hash power is. Try and spread out. It benefits everybody. As a pool operator, I can say this: it's like really hard to break even. a lot of pool operators that are still going are struggling. We're paying out of our own pockets to make sure that, people still have a safe and reliable place to mine DigiByte and other currencies. Um, so always try and stick with reputable pools where you can. If something new comes out and you have the ability to do so, and just like any investment risk, okay, I've got like $100, for example, that's not too bad. I've got more disposable income, so I can invest. But the same kind of mentality with mining. If you're working off, lower power ASICs and your power costs are high, then you might want to go towards working with a low fee PPS pool. So every share that you submit is going to get paid regardless. Whereas if you've got more power, you might want to go with like a reward system that rewards the miners for loyalty, for sticking with a pool and providing constant hash power. So pool hoppers are penalized, say like with payment per last known time. So you can see, well, has the miner still been connected for 24 hours? And, are they still submitting decent shares, or have they just been on for 2 hours in a day and then they pop off another 2 hours? So the people that genuinely mine 24/7 get the advantage for their loyalty. So there are a lot of variables again, but it's very, very important again that people spread out and obviously get the support that they need. So yeah, I'll finish there and hand back to you, Laura.
No, that was really good. And I have one other question about this specifically when you're picking a mining pool. Does it matter geographically? Like if if I was wanting to join a pool, would it matter if I joined a pool because I'm in the United States? Would it be better for me to does it matter if it's geographically closer, or does it not matter at all? What are your thoughts on that?
Again, a great point. I completely overlooked that. So thanks for bringing that up. Yes, it does make a difference. So when you're connecting your mining equipment to a pool, the thing that we talk about is latency. And latency is the time it takes your block submission or your shares to come from your mining equipment, from your ASIC, through your router, through the internet network, over to the pool, and then from the pool to the wallet, and then from the wallet out to everybody else through broadcasting. So as you can imagine, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes from point A to Z. So yes, when it comes down to mining, you want to choose something that's closer to you. As I mentioned earlier, it's possible for two people in different parts of the world to get the same block hash response to unlock the block, but it's about who submits that to the network first and like how many rebroadcasts it gets. As we know, when you look at a core wallet and a block is mined, you have to wait until so many more blocks mined until that block is available and the coins can be spent, just like with a transaction. So, say for example, you're in America and you have the choice between mining on a local pool, say on the East Coast or the West Coast, or you have a choice of mining something over in India or Singapore. You're going to want to choose the Stratum server, so the place that your miner connects to for the pool you're using, as close to you as possible. Because what can happen if you're mining on the US server, you submit your answer, the pool says, yes, this is good, the wallet accepts it, network accepts it, you're going to get those rewards. But what can happen if you're mining across to the other side of the world? That latency means that in the time of transit where your answers make it all the way across the internet, which still happens at a very fast speed, I must admit, but it's about who gets there first. It's a race. And it's about who gets their block submitted and gets it rebroadcast out to all the other nodes. So by the time, say, for example, you were mining in Singapore and you had another miner that's mining in the US versus a local stratum, theirs will get accepted because it's already been broadcast out to the other nodes. Yours gets to the pool. It says, yeah, valid block. Tries to submit it to the network. He goes, sorry, someone's beat you to the punch. And then that block becomes like kind of orphaned, or it's an invalid block. Someone beat you to it. So yes, latency makes a difference, choosing somewhere local. I also have to stress that sometimes it's still acceptable to hit blocks and not get orphans at a rate between 30 milliseconds all the way up to sometimes a high ping or latency of like 300 milliseconds. It's just always advantageous wherever possible to find a server with the lowest latency. And just as a follow-up, like how can people work out what the latency is? Well, some pools will show you per stratum from your physical location, you're accessing their services, and what the latency will be. So you're just looking for the lowest number possible. The shortest latency just means the fastest trip time. If the pools that you're using or you're investigating don't have that, you can use something called ping. Now, Apple Macs have it, Windows have it all built in. You just open up Terminal or go to command prompt, you type in like ping space, enter in the stratum name. So say, for example, you're connecting to a DigiByte pool. This is all fictitious. It's like stratum.digibyte.us or something. You ping that and you just look at the response and you see in milliseconds. And then you compare that with another pool and you go, okay, that one's closer to me. This one on average is got a shorter latency. So this is going to be the most reliable stratum for my setup.
That is an excellent point. And I'm going to actually, I'm going to add that as a note to this slide that you can do that ping test yourself. That was going to be one of my questions to wrap up this slide was, it's not always easy to tell where these mining pools are. They're not not all mining pools are transparent as you guys, believe it or not. So,
No.
a way to be able to test that is awesome. And I'll add that to some footnotes to this slide as well. That's a really good point. All right, I think let's move on now. And this next slide is, a comparison between solo and mining pools, which I think we've pretty much done a good job covering, talking about the rewards, efficiency, about using, that stronger hash power. What mining pools are going to give you is, one of the things it's going to give you is that income stability. If they're an honorable pool and has a good reputation. One thing I want to touch on though is that risk factor, that solo miners have a higher risk of not getting any rewards. So, back to what you were saying before, it all comes down to who's the first one to solve it, right? Who's the first one to get it. So in solo, if you're not a big operation, you're really reducing your chances on that one. And that last one, control, and I wanted you to actually go into this a little bit too, James, from your perspective. But there's that you, like you said, we want this to be decentralized, and one of the arguments I've heard against Bitcoin is that majority of the hash power is really comes down to just really a handful of mining pools. And so, that how do you support mining pools without having them dominate too centrally that hash power? Does that make sense? What I was trying to ask you,
No, it does. It's hard. So, I mean, yeah, the majority of miners, if you look at it like in terms of numbers of like how many people are mining, don't have the advantage of large scale operations. They don't have the advantage of being able to secure super low power rates at such a scale that they can break even easily. And you're quite right. I mean, looking at Bitcoin as an example, we have a lot of centralization on the top like 10 pools. So how does that happen? Okay, so again, there's normal miners, people that mine from home, some people that like may have some space in data centers or use mining hosting facilities where they might rent hardware that they offer to rent as a service, or where they can host things for them. What I see happening is there are specific mining organizations. So people that are making massive big data centers or locating their mining operations near cheap sources of power. Those people are highly sought after by mining pools because they know that they're going to secure a large chunk of the hash power. So therefore, more blocks are going to be found. The pool operator is going to get more commission. And because the mining kind of companies have so much power, they have the ability to say, well, what can you offer me in return? So if I come to your port, can you flex on the fee, for example? Can you lower it down? Otherwise, I can take my mining power elsewhere. So behind the scenes, you do have a lot of these mining companies actually working directly with the pools to maintain hash power, because hash power attracts hash power. Despite what I said about decentralization, the general thinking behind a lot of miners, which I think not all of them, but some I'd be careful on, tarnish everybody with the same brush here. But it's one of those situations where you just have to hope that you're going to have other large scale miners that are going to balance out, that are going to not completely centralize. It is a tough one because, again, I mean, people that have all this hash power have a lot of resources that the majority of miners don't have. So it means they can have an unfair advantage, but it can make it tougher. So I mean, coming back to like solo mining, if you've got a small amount of equipment, you could just be running it like a lottery ticket machine. Your chances of actually hitting that block reward could be quite small, but when you do hit it, yeah, do you get the block reward? But have you broken even on all your power costs? Probably not. So this is why it makes more sense sometimes to go towards pool mining. But yeah, it's unfortunate. It's how things work outside of cryptocurrency as well. If you've got a lot of money and you've got a lot of resources, then it's really easy to gain an advantage over the rest of the mining community. So it's, again, like I said about utility, it's the same thing with excuse me, miners. You've got to think, well, how many of these miners are interested in continuing utilization of the coin which they've been mining? Do they see it as more than just like a money making operation? Do they have belief in the future of the platform? Because when proof of work ends, you need that same community. You need all those miners to be pushing for adoption. You want them to be utilizing it, because that's what's going to secure things and keep things going forward. I just blabbered a bit there, Laura. If you
No,
want some clarity,
I thought that was I thought that was perfect, actually. And I like the way it really tied back down to, um, if we don't make it so that someone one day could use DigiByte to pay a bill, or to secure data, or if there's not a underlying use case, um, by 2035, why would why would the miners even want to support it at that point? So, I mean, I think you're right in we're kind of symbiotically moving the chain between the community trying to, get it incorporated in use cases, miners securing it, and yeah, it's that symbiotic, because everybody can't do everything. So getting those groups working together, and I think as a community, one of the things, not that we could stop centralizing the centralization of mining, but just to be aware that that is an underlying issue that plagues them all, and to try, like we're doing now, to be more educated about how to keep an eye on things, and if just to stay aware of what the ecosystem is doing, how it's evolving, how it's growing, and if it looks like there's red flags, just to be aware, and try to find solutions together to that. So no, I thought that was great. Um, okay, Patrick, I think we're ready for the next. This really is the kind of the meat and the potatoes. These next couple slides, and really kind of uh, how we all came to meet James and Craig is, what's the miner's role in updating the network, and when with 8.22, and we can go into more deep. We're almost done with the presentation, and we can go into more Q&A with the 8.22. I know a lot of people are curious about that, but when when the developers got to a place with 8.22 where they were like, okay, now we need to start testing it. And those of us who are non-developers we were like, well, what does that mean exactly? And they were like, you need to reach out to the pools and start finding which pool operators will help test the network. And like I said, we're all learning something new. I feel like every single day. And I didn't understand that role of the miners and the mining pools, that they had to go through and they had to do the testing of the network first before you can even move forward. So back to that symbiotic relationship of, a miner mining for a specific chain also wants to see that chain, secure and healthy, and to perform those testing and feedback. And we're getting quite a bit of feedback now in the testing phase of 8.22. But they want and need the chain to be secure as well. So they're a critical piece of anytime a network gets upgraded or forked, of that base level participation. Like we're doing today, communication and education. I think that is something that, as a community of non-developers, the non-developer community of DigiByte, I think, is really working hard to do well and to do it in an organized way, is to get that communication to the miners and get a fluid line open to know, what is it do you see, what can we do to help you, and just build that relationship. Again, I think today is just a really perfect example of that point. And when we do a protocol update, it really comes down to the miners. There's a lot of people think that the forks are decided on Twitter. That's actually not true. It really comes down to, the miners are deciding, what direction is that chain going to go, and getting all of that communication and testing up to date and everybody on the same page before we can move forward. So, and I know you've got a ton to add to this as well, James, just as far as the role that you guys play in those network upgrades. And I'm sure you've got a wealth to add to what we're doing right now in 8.22.
Yeah, so again, Laura, I mean, when any pool onboards any kind of coin, the best practice that everyone should follow is to test offline. So with any chain, especially with DigiByte, you've got something called testnet and you've got mainnet. They're two separate blockchains, but they run under the same program. So when you start up a DigiByte core wallet, for example, it generally will load up in mainnet mode. But the kind of hidden mode is testnet. And this is for pool operators, it's for developers, people that want to try and create these next level platforms that we've talked about, or the utilization cases for DigiByte. So one of the first things that we do, for example, at coin miners is if we've got a new coin, we'll download the chain, we'll put it in testnet mode, and then we'll start doing offline testing before we open it up to the general public. Now, this is important for us because we need to make sure that, number one, the wallet or the daemon code that we're using is compatible with our pool, that it's bug free, because again, we want to offer a service that's reliable for the mining community. But more importantly, we need to make sure that when a block is found or a share is submitted by one of our miners for any of the algorithms for DigiByte, that it's accepted by the pool, it passes verification, and it gets through to the network, it's committed. And then the final stage is, yes, okay, we found a block, it has committed, but is it going to pay out okay? And are there any problems along that route? So that's a normal onboarding process. But the same thing happens whenever there's a new release. So obviously we're talking about RC2 version 8.22. Obviously there have been a lot of backports that we've tried to bring into 8.22 to bring it up to speed with Bitcoin and some other protocol changes that have happened behind the scenes. But again, it's like you say, Laura, it's not just about it being decided on Twitter or DigiByte saying this is our new wallet, you have to use it. It's down to those miners, the mining pools, and everybody that's using a core wallet to make sure that they update and use that same version. Because when a block is found on a certain wallet version, it does something called consensus. So it will basically say, hey, look, I found a block. I'm on this version. I'm using these rules. Broadcast out. Say, for example, there's someone that's supporting DigiByte. They haven't updated their wallet like in a while. There's a new form of consensus which is supported by a majority. And again, this is the important thing: a majority, because those are the rules that are enforced on a chain. So if you've got all these varying wallet versions, sometimes you get this dissonance because they're not in agreement with each other. They're saying, well, I've submitted a block in this version that appears valid, but the majority of the network is using a newer version, and they say, sorry, you're not following our rules that we're playing with. You're out. um, so this is why it's really important, like you say, with communicating with mining pools, making sure that everybody updates, but more importantly, when we're doing things like this, that we do the testing, that we make sure that there aren't forks, that there isn't something that we've overlooked, or we may even, run into a new problem, and we may need to counter it. But it's really important that people do the testing, and that we make sure we get this version ironed out, any bugs, any improvements we can. Because again, every time a new daemon or a wallet is rolled out, that's a big upgrade process. Exchanges, pools, all the users, they generally have to upgrade to make it work. So you want to make sure at that point, if you're rolling something big out that takes so much effort for everybody to update, that you get as many qualitative updates in that rollout as you can to avoid, like some coins, I won't name them, but some that might not have the development in-house, and they do things almost on a daily basis, and it becomes monotonous. It breaks things down. Pool operators don't want to be like updating wallets all the time. They don't want to constantly be testing things. We like reliability just as much as your developers at DigiByte like reliability when they're pumping something out. So again, yeah, testing is really important. Making sure transactions go through, making sure blocks are found. One thing we've just been doing recently with testnet for 822 is making sure that blocks are being found for each algorithm. And it wasn't just coin miners. We also had Zulu Pool very kindly getting involved. And it's my hope that we can also get other big mining pools involved, because again, it's about the community. If we do things together, we can all push forward, work together towards a better future for DigiByte, and getting the kind of inclusivity and adoption that we're all hopeful for to keep DigiByte going into the future.
As that is well said. And like you said, in this process, in the testing process, there's gotten we're really lucky. But honestly, I have to say, I'm really grateful for you and Craig both for being so vocal in your efforts and helping, because I do think that others saw you doing it and they're like, well, we want you too, because we had reached out to several pools initially that were like, let us know when it's ready, but we're not really interested in testing. And I think it's one of those things that an object in motion stays in motion kind of thing. And when others saw you guys popping in and helping, and it gets others to want to do it as well. So it's building, ultimately I would love for DigiByte to have to be known for its mining community, and its, how collectively these pools are working together and helping the chain, and not just in some silo somewhere that nobody ever talks to them. So we're really grateful, and a part of the reason why we, trying to drive people to Discord and to GitHub, where we can keep those lines of communication open, because I think that is something that, again, we're trying our best to educate the broader community, and not just ours, but all of work communities, is think a miner, because we really wouldn't have these chains without them. And anything that happens in the network really it goes through the miners. It goes through the developers, it goes through the miners. And it's not like, well, so and so said this is going to happen, so it's going to happen. It's like, this is a decentralized blockchain. It doesn't happen like that. And so the more we can all be educated on that, I think, just collectively trying to grow that stronger foundation in our mining communities, because I think that was definitely something that, uh, I think most would agree, hasn't been addressed very well until this recent need. So, with all challenge comes an opportunity, and this challenge of 8.2 gave us an opportunity to really start opening those conversations back up with the pools and learning from you guys and seeing what we can do to support your efforts too. It's been good, but yeah, the miners are real important. So,
They sure are. It's like a symbiotic relationship that
very
you
much,
just
yeah.
mentioned, and early on, it's a hyper competitive industry, and it still is. I mean, some pool operators won't talk to each other. They won't help each other out, and it's a shame because, again, as I keep coming on about, the community is key here. Always have to work together. Like I said, developers could pump out a new version, but if the pools don't agree with it, or if the miners don't agree with it, it's not going to get adopted, and those kind of features will never activate. It will never reach like consensus. Um, so yeah, I mean, again, I do see a lot of positive stuff happening in this space, and obviously, when the DigiByte team reached out to Greg and myself, we're more than happy to get involved. I mean, we've always operated on the premise of being, open, transparent, and trying to help miners from, very low entry level up to larger scale mining farms. Both of us have been involved in helping other cryptocurrency projects. And obviously, our passion is in seeing this community move forward, whether it's DigiByte or any other coins that are really putting in the serious time and the effort and the foresight to think about, well, what are we doing differently? Why are we standing out? I think, as we all know, we've seen so many crypto clones. People just essentially creating a coin with that mindset. Oh, I've created a coin, therefore, it's going to have value. But no, only a few coins like in this race are really going to pull through at the end. Already the past 2 years since we've seen the crypto crashes, the whole environment has been ultra competitive. You've seen some coins that look promising completely disappear off the map. You've seen, because of the fall in crypto prices, that developers don't have the incentive to keep on working, to keep on pushing things forward. So when you see people in this point in time really putting in the effort, you know that they care about it because they're doing it generally for their love of crypto. They're doing it because they believe in it. Um, so it kind of like weeds out like all the people that really aren't into it. But again, I think it's great what DigiByte have done, trying to reach out to the community with regards to this testing, and for the future foresight for what DigiByte could be.
You make me so happy, James. I'm just gonna say.
Is it just my English accent?
Well, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt that it's an English accent. But yeah, I mean, it's been really not an easy experience, but definitely a deep learning one. And um, yes, every like I said, we find places where we can improve. There's always places to improve, and this definitely was one of them. And we hope we can even connect with other proof of work and be like, hey, this is what we're doing to build our miner relationships. We're in contact with other proof of work projects and being like, everybody should make a nice space for them to come and join and participate, make them feel welcome. So, um, yeah. And we've got one other slide on this, and then we'll just open up straight up to Q&A. And I'm sorry, Patrick, just go to slide 10. We kind of covered slide 9. Yeah, there you go. So, and in this, again, everybody has access to this PowerPoint and resources. But when we were first looking at, trying to find out who are the pools that we need to contact, and trying to find some of the latest information. I just pulled this um, from a link on, from a Google link, but this is one of the mining pool stats. And you could just real quick, before we go into the Q&A, if you're looking to explore mining pools and trying to see how to read this information, how would you go about that, James? Like, what would be your suggestions when people are doing their research on the statistics of the mining pools and the hash power?
Sure. So first of all, great resource you pulled up. I know the person that runs mining pool stats.stream. He's brilliant. If anything, it's like a massive resource for developers, mining pools, and miners alike. I have to say, I use mining pool stats.stream every day, and I'll never stop shouting their praises. So yeah, again, brilliant website. I'm not getting paid for this to mention them, by the way. But yeah, it's brilliant because again, what it does when you go on there, say for example, in your presentation, you're looking at the SHA-256 comparison page. So what you can see on here is number one, where is the hash power? So I'm looking at it right now. I think just since we've been having this call the past hour, it seems to have attracted some attention towards our pool. So I think we've got like, yeah, 33.4%. So whoever that is, thank you for coming to us. But also, we love you. Look at other pools as well. Try and spread it out. I mean, it affects our commission, but at the end of the day, it's about the longevity of the coin, not what commission we make. So, yes. So coming back to a lot of the different points that we've made, when you're on this website, it will show you like where the hash power is, and we'll do it in hash power order. So what we generally recommend to miners, if we're being unbiased, is look at this list, work out like how much power you have as a miner, look at the pool fees, compare them to potential pools that you're interested in jumping on. What are the min payment amounts? So say for example, if you've got lower hash power, you probably aren't going to be hitting like a higher payout threshold for a while if the pool set it so high. So you might want to look at something more of a minimum level, because just like with not your keys, not your coins, the pool is not necessarily a bank, but it will hold on to those coins until you hit that level. And again, we all like our coins under our own private keys in our cold storage or our own wallets that we control. But again, coming back to stats, look at the hash rates that are on all the pools. Look at the stats, like how many blocks are being found by these pools. So, you know, there is a degree of luck. Just because you've got a lot of hash power doesn't always necessarily mean you're going to hit the blocks. There is a high potential you will, but it's not a guaranteed thing. Say, for example, we're talking about all the different algorithms that DigiByte offers. You know, it's not always going to be possible just because, say, for example, SHA-256 has more power than all the other algorithms, that those are just going to be the majority of blocks. It's like that balancing mechanism that ensures that, you know, no one algorithm kind of overtakes the chain. So like Odo or like FPGA miners don't get pushed out. They can still have an advantage. So again, I mean, when I look at pool that I personally want to mine on from a personal mining perspective, like pool side, I look at like where's a good entry point. So a saturated pool with loads and loads of miners with lots of hash power isn't always going to be as profitable as people think. Because again, they have that mentality of like, that's where the hash power is, that's where the blocks are going to be found. But again, lots of hash power, lots of people, that means that those rewards, every time a block is found, have to be like sliced up into tiny chunks. So yeah, you may get more regular payments, but they're going to be smaller. So sometimes think about not jumping onto the top pool. Think about, again, the trust level of pools. Like if you ask a pool operator a question or you're stuck, how quickly do they get back to you? Do they, you know, respond to your request satisfactorily? Are you just happy with everything? I mean, a lot of miners just want to find someone reliable, like we all do with any service we use day in, day out. You want to, if you're paying for something or you're putting money into something like paying power costs or you're buying hardware, you want to make sure that you're getting that return. So again, see if they have Discord servers, see how active they are on Twitter. You know, use your intuition as well. You know, do you have a good feeling about these guys? If not, you know, join the communities, talk to some of the users, see what their experience is. There's a lot of good pools out there, and there are some pools that might not be there. Again, grateful for any pool that's out there for decentralization, but always keen to make sure that users or miners are using a service that's reliable, so it doesn't tarnish the reputation of mining, and so everybody can get enjoyment out of the mining process and the future of cryptocurrency.
Perfect. Perfect. That's a perfect way to wrap up the PowerPoint. Um, yeah, I like that. I lived on this website honestly for about a month when we were putting together our plan to contact all the pools. So yeah, I really like that website a lot. It's funny that you know the well, not funny. I mean, there's a big world and a small world all in one.
There's all community. This is what it's about. Like network with people, build bridges, not barriers, is what I say.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that too. Okay, Patrick, you can stop sharing your screen now. Thank you for running that for us. And if you don't mind, Craig, if you want to join the speaker stage, we can open it up for some Q&A if you guys got some time. Perfect. Let me see how I'm doing this.
I've got to say, before Craig joins as well, Craig's been instrumental in helping with the 822 testing. He's, like worked really hard to set up some of the testnet stuff. He's like personally paid for like hash power for testing, and he's been working backwards and forwards with other people that are trying to get involved as well. So Craig is an amazing asset to have on board to work with coin miners, but also he's always been a pleasure to work with on any project we've worked on. So I'll stop talking and hand over to Craig.
Now, I will say, for our perspective, from the community side perspective, we're all in our little channels, and we're all super grateful for Craig. So thank you both really for taking the time today, and thank you, Craig, for giving us a more deep technical and the support you've given already so far with the testing. Super excited about that. I know that White Hagel has some questions for sure, and anybody else who wants to post, we're doing this room a little bit different. It's not a mic, but you can post your questions on the board, and you can see White Hagel just posted some questions about GitHub, and what other items in regards to the PR requests that you guys have been putting in. So if you can see that, if you pull that open, read that question if you want to respond to that one.
Sorry, Laura, where did you say the
If you go
question was
up,
posted?
if you go up to the top, do you see the little like the little comment section, AMA in the top right hand corner? If you open that
Yeah, I
up,
have that now. Yeah.
Okay, see, okay, great. Pleasure. So you're not English, Craig. I'm surprised. I thought you guys
No,
were both
I'm Canadian. So.
Oh, wow, that is I was picturing an English accent getting ready to start, so it threw me for a loop. We have a lot of Canadians in the community, actually. A lot of Canadians. All right, are you able to see that, Craig, of what he was asking?
Yeah, I'm just reading it now.
Yeah, sure.
There's some history whilst Craig's having a read over that. So Craig isn't like a natural born Canadian. He's actually closer to me than you'd think back in time. He's actually hails from Scotland. Isn't that right, Craig?
That's right. I was born in Scotland, but came to Canada at a very young age. So, so I consider myself Canadian now. So.
From Scotland to Canada. Well, I guess you probably never want to live in like Bali or someplace like that.
But most of my siblings, so my brother and sister, they're both in the U.S. now. So one's in Arizona, one's in Dallas. So.
Wow. You'll get your fill of hot then. So yeah, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
The question is really about, I guess the PR that I put in, which is really from a mining standpoint or mining pool standpoint, and just how we get stats. Typically, because we have all the algorithms running on coin miners, rather than having multiple daemons running to support it, we sort of use one daemon, but with the actual RPC calls to it, we can call it based on the algo that we want to actually get information on. So whether that's the the actual hash rate on the network per algo, or submitting getting the actual GBT command, so get block template based on that algo, so that the target is set at the right setting for that algo, so that we can determine whether or not a block is or share submitted is a block found. So there was just in that PR that I submitted, there was one where in GBT it was there. The actual algo was there. It just wasn't added as a parameter with some of the updates. So you couldn't actually call it with that. So that one helped put that one in. And then, of course, the actual get mining info. That's really to get it at each of the different the network hash rate, as well as some other items based on that algo. It really, from a RPC command call, they are the parameters that were added to it are really, it doesn't change anything from if you were running the older wallet. The RPC calls, you either add that parameter or you don't. The response will still be the same. With 8.22, though, the response JSON that does get returned is different from the prior wallet anyway. So there will be some changes that would be required from the different pool operators if they are using those values to read that JSON response.
Awesome. YK,
I
did
mean,
you have? Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Well, you were going to ask something else?
I was going to ask if he had
So
any other
about
follow-up
his,
questions.
and again, he was looking at it from a standpoint of his ability to, I guess, speed up the actual synchronization on the Pi 4 right now. That's taking a long time, right? That
Yeah.
they're and again, every algo, there are some ways to speed that up. One of the things I was looking at was sort of doing a caching of that POW hash. So that way, with machines that don't have the power to calculate the hash on a regular basis, by getting that paraded, it reduces on the requirement to actually go out and calculate the hash, since it can pull it from the actual cache that's created without utilizing the actual, let's say in this case, the Pi 4 from calculating that hash. Now, if it was to validate, you don't want it to always use the cache. So there are certain areas within that it's not going to be caching or utilizing the cache, but actually calculating the hash. But from a, starting up the wallet and so forth, it would increase the speed of that time. Typically, the hard part about right now is the chain is so large, so it does take time. And it's difficult. I would say it's easier once you have, let's say, a bootstrap or something like that with the cache file to start it up quicker. But it's also difficult to keep that up to date, keep it up on a site for people to utilize, especially when you're talking the size of the data in the chain.
That's a good point. I mean, and syncing's always like, that's just a universal issue always. And like you said, because the chain is so long and so there's so much data. any way that can be that sync time can be, brought down, the better. I think somebody else is asking a question right now. We're getting one more question. So Winston said basically using the cache as a save point, so to speak. Is that how you would describe it as well?
Yeah, pretty much. So it pretty much creates the hash for every block, stores it within a file so that when, rather than calculating the hash every time, it can just read the cache. So from that point,
Okay.
but it would be
Yep.
from basically, yeah, it's from a save point, so to speak. I would say that's correct. There's other
Yeah,
ways to go about this, but
it's a
this
bit
is
like
one
a
way.
cheat book, isn't it, Craig? So instead of the CPU of the machine like running, instead of doing all that hard, heavy lifting, it's just like, oh, I'll just reference it. Okay, I've got the answer.
Right.
I teach math and I tell my students to make reference sheets all the time to cut down on their research time. See, it's all the same. It's just like mining. Um, now, Jose, did you have any questions? Because we had talked earlier this week with one of our community members, Jose, who's phenomenal. But we were talking about having this discussion today, and yeah, he's typing. I know we had touched. I know Jose and I both were wondering and trying to understand the difference between the test net and the main net. So we had touched on that though with James. So I don't know if that answered his question or if he wanted to go a little bit deeper with that. Maybe he's formulating his question. Yeah, he's typing now. Yeah, I think I picked the wrong stage because we can't give everybody. Well, I can put Jose up in the mic. He has to request it though. Jose, do you want to request to go on stage and then I can add you in? It'd be easier than typing the question. While we're waiting on that, yeah, White Hagel put in the statement. My understanding is if we solve PR 133, we could possibly cut 8.22 RC3 to see if any changes solve the issues. So
yeah, I think there's two different things though. So PR 133 won't solve the speed of the time. I am working on another PR that I will submit shortly about the speed issue. So that would be a different PR than 133. 133 is more about the RPC calls and how they will benefit more the pool operators than, let's say, the speed of the chain loading.
Gotcha. Makes sense. And so you're amazing. You're like a machine, Craig. You have a whole cheerleading section in the DigiByte community, just if you're not aware. I know we're always like, Craig just put something on GitHub. Craig just posted. We're like all running to wherever you are. So Jose said no question. Just wanted to say I'm impressed with the coin miner Zulu pool and everyone contributing to 8.22. Amen, Jose. Amen. I mean, it really does. It felt like the task was just so large when we all started, and it kind of renewed my whole open decentralization. To be honest with you, like being able to reach out and have people, like if we would have gotten no response from anybody and trying to bang on doors and just getting a few of you to come in and help and especially you guys just doing our job helping and communicating and even on social media, all of that matters to get the community involved. And so we're just super incredibly grateful for all your efforts and all your technical expertise too that you're giving to GitHub, on top of just communicating and having good energy and keeping that ethos and that sentiment alive, where it's like this is a competitive state, but we also want to see everybody succeed, and that's it's a hard balance to strike, and I think that you guys have done a really good job with that for sure.
And I think you already mentioned it. It's sort of about testnet, and the developers, DigiByte developers have put in a lot of time and effort in putting the code changes for 8.22. You know, you do want that tested. The hard part is always that day of releasing something new, especially if there's any consensus type changes that could alter the chain. You want everyone on board. You want everyone being able to test that out and to be confident that when you go live, that there are no issues, right? So the more we can help, the more that you have more eyes looking at it. You know, as a developer, we always think our code's 100%, but having those other eyes on it definitely helps doing that. So.
Absolutely. And I want to also, Zulu Pool just joined, and thank you for joining us. We're actually wrapping up, but we will have this recorded, and we have the PowerPoint and the resources. So, and for any of you guys with the mining pools, feel free to use this PowerPoint. Like if you're presenting to somebody else, if you're, you need to lay it out to somebody, please use that resource. That's what it's there for. Oh, no worries. Nothing like a global clock. Thank you so much, Craig. Have a wonderful afternoon or evening.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm Eastern time zone, so.
Okay, yeah. Well, have a wonderful Sunday. Yeah, we're wrapping up now, and I just want to thank you guys so much for your time and your expertise, and we'll see you on all of the channels.
No doubt. Again, thanks, Laura, for having Craig and myself on today. It's been a pleasure to be involved, and we look forward to working with yourself, the developers, and the wider digital